genes directs us from behind the scenes. The words within it shape life's destiny. Hidden in your DNA is your genetic dossier. It tells your future and your history. How traits get passed from parents to a child is something that has kept us so beguiled. Cracking the code, genetic mysteries to unfold. Cracking the code, genetic secrets will be told. Cracking the code, genetic mysteries to unfold. Cracking the code, genetic secrets will be told. Cracking the code.
The script that's written in our genes has an alphabet of only 4 letters. It is the irregular and utterly unique sequence of these letters, 3 billion of them, that makes us human beings, and each of us, unless we have an identical twin, different from each other. We have now learned how to read, exploit, and even rewrite the genetic code within ourselves and all other forms of life. These explosive developments in genetics and biotechnology are bringing about a revolution in science, medicine, and agriculture. As it expands in pace and power, this revolution promises to bring even greater changes in the way we live and how we create new life. It will also present us with difficult new choices and dilemmas, and it is the subject of this series. How did we arrive at this point? Cracking the code of life is the culmination of a quest that is as old as human observation. We begin with the ancient puzzle of heredity. From the beginning, it was clear that in some cases, physical traits are passed down from parent to child, sometimes on through the generations. But in other cases, a child might bear little resemblance to either parent or to its siblings, or more of a resemblance to a grandparent than to a parent. There seemed to be no consistent pattern within the visible complexity of life. The ancients believed in divining or reasoning their way to the facts, rather than using experiment and observation. Most of these guesses about biological inheritance were wildly wrong, yet some of them survived into the modern era. The ancient Greek philosophers, like Aristotle, thought that the male parent was more important than the female in determining heredity. Perhaps this was because they viewed the semen of the male as resembling the seed of a plant, and a seed usually develops into a plant like the one it came from. They saw the reproductive role of the female as akin to the soil which nurtures the plant. But that theory had an obvious flaw. Half of all children turn out to be girls. A good thing, but hardly a chip off the old male block. To get around that one, Greek philosophers had to come up with a special theory about the origin of gender. Some thought the sex of the child was determined by which testicle the sperm came from. The one on the right, producing boys. The one on the left, producing girls. That still didn't allow for any inheritance from the mother.
Give me a break.
This belief was advanced by the influential Roman physician Galen, and it persisted within medical circles until the 19th century discovery of the mammalian egg. Observation, as opposed to speculation, started with the breeding of animals, which began long before the Greeks. Over the course of time, farmers and shepherds noticed which traits were passed from either of the parents to their offspring, and gradually learned how to select out and crossbreed those animals with the most desirable traits. The crossbreeding of plants came much later. In fact, it wasn't until the 1690s that it was discovered that plants have sex organs and the ability to cross-fertilize. In the 1700s, the Swedish scientist and physician Carl Linnaeus undertook the monumental task of cataloging and classifying every known form of life. Linnaeus was intrigued by plant sexuality and categorized plants on the basis of their sex organs. To others, these were a source of amazement and even scandal. To some moral critics, so much pollen and so few seed chambers suggested female promiscuity. Linnaeus's lasting achievement was a two-part system for naming each species, which is still in use today. A major controversy among scientists of the time was whether species are unchangeable or whether they can evolve. Many botanists firmly believed in the biblical teaching that species were fixed at creation. Linnaeus disagreed. He was sure that crossbreeding two different plant species would produce a new intermediate one, but he didn't put his theory to the test. A contemporary of his, the German botanist Joseph Kuhlreuter, decided to settle the issue with the first true experiments in genetics. Unfortunately, much of his work was sabotaged by his disgruntled gardener, Saul. Kuhlreuter began by crossbreeding two different species of tobacco plant. These plants are called the parent or P generation. He then planted the resulting hybrid seeds, which is called the F1 generation. These seeds produced a new type of plant that retained some of the features of both parents while losing others. But the real test of whether this hybrid was a new species was if it could reproduce itself. In fact, cross-fertilizing the F1 generation produced only a few new seeds. Kuhlreuter was not surprised, since like many others, he believed in an unchanging nature. But he was surprised at what happened next. When he planted these seeds to produce the next, or F2 generation, some of the missing traits from the P generation reappeared. This turned out to be an important clue in solving the riddle of heredity. But Kuhlreuter didn't recognize its significance. Perhaps he was too distracted by his gardener. Charles Darwin, the great English biologist, lived and worked in this house, south of London, for most of his life. He too was interested in the evolution of new species, which by the mid-19th century was becoming an accepted fact. Darwin noticed that domestic plants and animals gradually evolved due to breeder selection of particular varieties. He was also much taken with the idea that overpopulation would lead to competition and to the survival of the fittest. To explain evolution in nature, Darwin developed his theory of natural selection, that nature selects out for survival those variations that are best equipped for reproductive success. His book on evolution was published in 1859. It caused a sensation and made him a world celebrity. Darwin's theory of natural selection, leading to evolution, has stood the test of time. But he also wanted to explain variation, the raw material upon which natural selection works, and heredity, the way a selected variation is passed down to future generations. In that, he was far less successful.